Okay, so just back to gravity, back to reality. So basically just leaving the head. So most of us don't live in the world, we live in our heads, yeah? So the two things that will almost guarantee that you actually leave the head and come into the world are risk and danger, the two things we try our best to avoid. So just feeling that point of contact with the ground, the place you have physical contact with the world. In a sense, that's the most important part of your body. And just feeling the two legs just working together, but sort of independently. So rather than being locked into a machine that is just moving left to right, one is pushing and one is receiving, and they're both really listening to each other. So your two legs are pushing hands with each other. Yeah, so the partner work that we do is just a model for our own body in a sense. So when you're pushing hands with a person, is that sort of listening, that sort of real listening that you need to prevent yourself from anticipating. That's the same here, yeah? So it's a listening that really bristles. Yeah, so just imagine you have the teacher there. So whenever you're moving, just imagine that the teacher's there, and at any moment he could clap his hands and you have to just stop. Yeah. So you're listening to each microsecond. No momentum. Yeah, and so the body is sunk, the body is down and relaxed, but there's something in the spirit that's really sort of charged, that makes you almost breathless, yeah? Or almost like a state of hyperventilation. Because you're just incredibly receptive. Every hair on your body is listening. So to move properly, the body has to split into two, a left and a right. And in order to split into a left and a right, it has to not split into an upper and lower. So we just need to really connect here, legs and torso. Yes, just feel it as like almost like you're picking apples. Yeah, you're picking apples in order to eat them. You know, you're hungry. And so, you know, each time you move, the foot is hungry for the ground, which you can also interpret as the ground being hungry for you. So as I draw myself, I'm pulling myself down into that point. Yeah. So down to earth. Okay, so let's just bring it back. So just feel the body. Yeah, so you become like a tree. If you think of yourself as a tree, and the ground actually starts here. So your legs are these two thick roots that are actually in the earth. Then the bole of the tree, the trunk, just comes up here, and then it just branches out into this amazing canopy. And the canopy is just full of life. You're full of creatures and movement, energy, spirit. So remember Enid Blyton's The Faraway Tree. It's a beautiful book. The children go into a forest and they find this enormous tree in the center of the forest. And as they climb it, they meet all these creatures, all the, you know, strange people, strange creatures, strange dwellings. Yeah. And when you get right to the top, then you can step out of the tree and into a different world. Yeah. It's just a beautiful image, really, of what we're trying to do. We just stand, we become this tree of energy, and then we can just step into this world of energy, really, world of the imagination. Yeah. And the key to it really is the breathing. It's difficult to appreciate it. Yeah. There's something about the breath that when you free it up, it will actually take you. So if you've ever done rebirthing or read about it, you know, they just take a lot of shallow breaths connected into the upper chest, and it just, you hyperventilate, and so the blood chemistry changes and you just go into these trance states. So it's a bit like that. So the breathing is from here, but it feels like it's the thymus that's actually expanding and closing as much as anything. So we live in a world that's dominated and limited by language. And if you get into meditation, then eventually sort of that you can let that go a little bit, and you just realize just how big the world really is. Yeah. And particularly, your own being. Yeah. So here it just really expands. Yeah. So you don't have the usual sort of boundaries and limitations. And that requires an imagination. Imagination is really natural. If you don't have one, then basically you're unnatural. Because as you expand, you're basically expanding into energy. Yeah. And if you're blocking that, then you're limited. So just feel it. The more you expand, the more your root, the stronger your root has to be, the more connected to the earth. So they saw, the root system and the canopy of the tree, the crown of the tree, sort of mirror each other. So the bigger the canopy, the bigger the root system, otherwise it's unstable. And just feel the sensation of the air coming in and out. There should be like a really pleasurable sensuality to it. So you're breathing in oxygen, going into your blood, and then you're breathing out carbon dioxide and water, steam. So it's a real exchange going on. Okay, so let's just bring it back. Okay, now let's just try this very simple Qigong. So again, coordinated with the breathing. So breathing in as you reach out and gather. in, and then breathing out as you bring the energy down to the dantian. So breathing in and breathing out. And then we start turning with it, yeah? So we just really need to appreciate the importance of turning. Because it's only really when you turn that you lose the world of objects, the world of language and things. So the world becomes a blur when you turn. So you no longer stabilize yourself by locking onto the objects of the room with your eyes. So it just forces you inside. You just have to rely on the 2 feet on the ground and your own center, your own dantian. Yeah, so when you turn, you scan the whole space. You don't just scan the part that you can see. Yeah, so when I turn, it enables me to reach into all the corners of the room. And just feel the separation between mind and body. So the body reaches out and the mind is still in the middle somewhere. Yeah, and just let yourself become the exercise. So you're not a body that's exercising, which contains a mind that's thinking to itself. You are possessed by the exercise. The exercise is doing you. And now let's try the breathing again, but through like the small hole. So just making the breathing a little bit more strenuous. So breathing in here, sucking the air in through the small hole of the mouth, and then blowing it out. So we just want to feel the muscles in the belly having to work, having to come in to help the diaphragm, and how that just gives support to the lower back. Yeah, so it's the tree again. So, the bigger the crown of the tree, the more foliage, the more life it contains, the stronger the trunk has to be. Yeah, so this is really your trunk. So we want to feel like there's like a belt of muscle. And if we want this to really open out, almost like it doesn't have a boundary, it's just bleeding and seeping, then there's another part of me that has to be really tight. And that's this. I want to tighten this belt in order for this to be open. Yeah. And then just turn with it a little bit. So turning just brings you into the world of energy and movement. So it's like a purer being, really. Because it doesn't matter how quiet your mind is, if you're still in a world populated by objects, then you are effectively as well. You're still conscious of them. And just feel how it's when you turn to the side that you open up. When you come back to the front to a symmetrical posture, you close down. So here it all opens up. So I have to make sure that this isn't locked, that it's really spreading across my sacrum. So I'm relaxing into this. rather than just pushing myself around forcefully. Yeah, so when I turn, I don't turn by just pushing. There's almost a sense that something here just slides off. One side sinks preferentially. So this side, it's like something in me just, and that brings me round. So you'd like this in the form as well. So the turning is a relaxation. It's just that one side is just relaxing a little bit more than the other. So when my left side relaxes more, I turn to the left. And it is like something just falls away, almost like some clothing. Yeah, so what we'd like is that everything that we do in Tai Chi happens because something has relaxed rather than because something has got tense. So relaxation is of energy and tension is of force. So if I just force myself round, then it's like I stay clean. I stay clean and compact and discreet. And so, when you get into energy, basically you bleed. Yeah? It's like your boundary disappears and you're just evaporating. There's a sense that you're just, yeah, and it's quite frightening because it feels like you're losing your energy, losing your power. And of course you would if you didn't actually have the opposite of that somewhere, the real togetherness in the belly. So it's equilibrium, dynamic equilibrium. I'm not held together because I've made a container for myself with my mind. That's what the thinking mind does. Okay. So let's just bring it back again. And now just feel this belt. Yeah. It's like, in Lord of the Rings, when the Sam and Frodo have sort of split off and they're sort of making their way to Mordor. And they don't have much food. So he's often saying they had to tighten their belts. Yeah. So, they're getting thinner because they're not eating. But there's also this feeling that when you tighten your belt, it brings you together. You're just more determined, more ruthless, less self-pitying. So that's the feeling of this belt here. Yeah. And less inclined to show off, to sort of display and promote yourself. Yeah. So that would come from this, from just tightening these muscles and losing these muscles. Yeah. Yeah, so nowadays, you either become depressed or you become a show-off. Yeah. And so what we want to do is just become hunters. Yeah. So we're just like with a sense of purpose. Yeah. It's like when you've got a toothache. Yeah. And it's not too bad, but it's there and it's always nagging away. And you fantasize about, oh, when I've been to the dentist, there'll be no pain and I'll be so much happier. And then you go to the dentist, he takes the pain away. And then you realize you've just become your old indulgent self again. And that pain was like a nag that was just forcing you to just be with your body. That's what we need. We need a pain, yeah, a reminder. The curse of the mediocre student is forgetfulness. Yeah. So it's like, when you meditate, the insight that always comes is that you need to quieten down inside. And yet it's every time. Every time you meditate, because you forget. Yeah. Okay. And now just trying to just really sort of close it down now. So using the turning in a yielding sense, yeah. So I'm yielding here. But again, it's got that same feeling that I'm turning because something is relaxing down, but it's also drawing in. And then this side can then open out, really, not just from the extending arm, but like a big billowy wing that's come out of your spine. So one side of your body is really retreating and contracting and disappearing down the leg into the ground, and another part of your body is just coming out and sending this enormous cape or canopy over that, whatever it is you imagine is in front of you. Yeah. So we need these two minds. One mind that is retreating and shrinking and hardening in a sense, and another mind that is opening and expanding and bleeding outwards. And just feel how they're balanced, or they should be. Yeah. So the openness here depends upon the closeness here. If I'm not properly closed in, I throw this out. I have to use force to stabilize my body. I want the body to be stable because I've balanced the two sides, not because I've instituted some force to unify myself. The unities are always Taoist. They're always two extremes pushing hands with each other. And just feel the two sides of your body. So if you're right-handed, then you'll generally find that it's the right hand that's best at yielding, if you like, at taking, and the left hand is best at giving. So here I really have to concentrate on just allowing my shoulder just to free up here, so that the energy I'm throwing out is as big as the energy I'm throwing out here. And so as soon as my mind wanders, the equilibrium is replaced by a stiffness. And so we guard against a frozen body, but a body that is locked into movement is just as frozen as a body that is locked into stillness. Yeah. Yeah, so our model is not the movement of the machine, but the movement of the hunter or the hunted. Yeah, something that really has to listen. So you just get more and more cocooned in your own energy. Like each time you throw the arm out, it's like a very thin layer of energy is just going out. And then as you turn here, it wraps around you. Okay, so let's bring it back. So just feel it. It's very much like you're sort of wrapped up. Yeah. So there's that reality, but there's also the reality of the branches of the tree sort of breaking out of that. Yeah, so the images are always just one half the picture, really. There's always contrary images. Okay, and now let's just turn, just like our normal turning exercise. And again, just getting it by, so it's like something off the hip sort of falls. And the hip bones are really important. Yeah, so this almost has the feeling of like the opposite of the previous one. The previous one was sort of wrapping yourself up in energy. This almost feels like you're pulling those layers of energy apart, away from the body to make yourself naked again. So it's the arm that reaches behind the back that's pulling that layer. And it's that sense of something falling away from you that actually draws you into the outside edge of the foot, which is really important. That's it. So just take the turn as far as it will go. It's like I can turn up to here, but then if I go further, it's like it just introduces like real instability in my hips. So I just want to practice that and just let them stabilize. So to get any further, I have to really let go here, and then this sort of wobbles. Okay, so let's just bring it back. Yes, and now it should just feel like really wobbly. Yeah, so it's sort of wobbling on every plane. Yeah, it's wobbling like this. Yeah, it's wobbling like this, like this. Yeah. And so symmetry is pathology. You know, when the movement is symmetrical, it's a sign that there's something wrong. Yeah, so one of the old ladies I work with, she's 99, and she's always complaining that she's dizzy. Shikora, that means drunk in Hebrew. And so, there's this sort of sense that she has to be really careful when she walks. Otherwise, that dizziness will produce a fall. But she can be, barely able to function. And yet when we hold hands, I'm just infused with energy. Yeah. Because it's this sort of tingly energy, real energy. It's energy that has been completely not shaped by her thinking mind, by her mind that grasps images. It's just pure energy, yeah? And that just comes from her refusing really to just lock, just having come to the conclusion that this doesn't produce good people, yeah? So all heart, that's what John would say. Okay, and now let's just try stepping back and forth, just to bring a bit of real movement. Yes, remember John used to say the moment of truth in Tai Chi is when you take your foot off the ground. So, again, just delaying. So don't fall into the foot. Actually really pull yourself into it. So I have to wait until this really feels ready, and then it will pull the weight into it. It doesn't need the other leg to push. Just feel it. As soon as you start moving your feet, you have to work extra hard to keep the upper and the lower body together, especially when you step back. Yeah? Because when you step back, it tends to sort of make a break here. So if I want to do it successfully, I have to make the connection, the join, like so I have a resilient togetherness, yeah? It's like a unity that's always threatening to fall apart. Because the connections can stretch, but they'll always ping back. And that just requires a really sort of quiet mind. So mind is in the dantian, but your energy is really reaching out. Think of yourself like a porcupine or a hedgehog covered in these spines that are extending into the world. And the more you can shrink into your dantian, the more the spines extend. Yeah, so like the hedgehog that becomes a spiny ball as it rolls up to protect itself. And then let's try the other one. Yeah, so our minds have been modeled by language, they've been sort of structured by language to the detriment of the imagination. So this is why the work just takes so long, because we have to undo that damage. And you can only manage a certain amount. And this for me is why meditation is so important. To have an hour or two in the day when you're not thinking, when you're just with your energy, with your breathing. It's the only hope. It's the only chance. There's something Jacques Lacan said. He said, the unconscious is structured like a language. I'm not sure what he meant, but for me, it's like the complete opposite. So the unconscious, the world of energy, has no grammar. It's not like a language at all. It just flows and mists. Nothing about it is certain or set. And so a mind that can sort of make movement within that, it's a mind that sort of squeezes and pushes gently. The best way to get a handle on it is to take drugs. And, not habitually, don't get addicted to them, but just every now and then, twice a year. And because you can just really feel, okay, you're hallucinating, but you just feel the effect of the mind. Your mind can just squeeze a little, and then the whole scenario will shift. And it always shifts in a way that sort of takes you by surprise, but then you realize it's actually you that's produced it. It's just come from part of your mind that you didn't even realize was there. It's like dreams. You can dream something that you just know that you've never experienced. And yet, obviously, you have on some level. So the usefulness of drugs is that they can break addiction. The danger of drugs is that they can produce addiction. The thing we're all addicted to is ourself, is our own ego, our own chatty mind. And it's, taking drugs just shows you that that is really limiting you. And that beyond that, there's whole universes. And then that may stimulate you to start the internal work required to enter those energy spaces at will. So as you work, you just need to have a sense of where you're going, almost like premonitions. This is what happens basically when you have a good practice session. You're just getting a feeling for where you're going, for how you would be in a year's time. But then you also need to have a feeling of what it is that's holding you back. And generally the thing that holds you back is clinging to the mundane world. Attachment. So that's, that's all addiction is, isn't it? It's just you're attached, you're dependent. Yeah, we want to be independent, unattached, detached. The irony being, it's only when you get to that state that you just really open out and become connected to everything. The sense that you're just bleeding into everything. Yeah. So connected that everything's indistinct. Okay, so let's just bring it back one last time. And this sense that you're sort of, the little self, the ego self, is sort of curling up inside. It's almost like it's embarrassed. It's a bit ashamed of itself, and it's just sort of hiding away. And that allows your energy to billow out of your back and surround you. Not just on this plane, but also right here. So you're inside a bubble. And what holds that bubble together is just your own mind in Danshan, your own gravity, your own field of gravity, which is spherical. The gravity of the earth is just lines, vertical lines. So what's making you cohere is not your own ego, your own internal dialogue, but the equilibrium between your own sobriety and the desire of the world to tear you apart. So every object is demanding attention, is making a demand upon you. We don't realize, we think everything is up to us. Okay, let's just bring it back to attention and just allowing the legs only to straighten to that point of still having this elastically pulling down. So it's like the legs are sort of squeezing against that elastic pull down. So the legs themselves become elastic. And just feel the body. Feel the skin, like every square centimeter breathing, exchanging. And just feel your metabolic processes. Yeah, so the breathing, the heartbeat, digestion, you know, so all these sort of just creaky snakes that just make their way through your body all the time. It's basically your fascia. Your fascia is breathing with the craniosacral rhythm. You know? So there's this slippery surface inside you that's just ripply and oozy. Okay, great.